All right, so global warming being what it is, figured I'd give you some recommendations on. Let's start over. All right, being that we got all the global warming and whatnot going on, I figured I'd give you some recommendations on air conditioning equipment. So the main thing that you're going to need, and these have actually gotten to be very reasonably priced, is an AC manifold. And the big things that you want to look for, I mean, I'm talking primarily about working on cars, but you can use this on, I've used it on R22 systems, and you can also use it on R12, R410A. It says it all right there. So you can use this as long as you get the appropriate fittings on any sort of air conditioning system. So you should be able to refill. Well, you know what? I'm not 100% sure about refrigerators and stuff like that, but you could definitely do household AC and definitely do automotive AC with this. And these are less than $100. They're not that expensive. Now, the things that I want to point out to you as far as what to look for. So you want a four-way manifold. You want to have four valves that go in. You got a high side, a low side, a refrigerant, and a vacuum. And the other big thing you want on the body is a sight glass. So those are the big things. I mean, as long as it's kind of got those things, you're fine. If you're doing automotive work, the kind of valve that you want to look for. One thing that's annoying about this one is these fittings come loose all the time. The kind of valve that you want to look for is the kind with this screw on top. So what happens is this is a quick connect. You can see the little balls there. It slides on the valve, and then when you screw this down, it causes that pin to come in, and it actually punches the valve. Generally, what I've found with these is that you are less likely to tweak a valve. So inside the AC is just like a little Schrader valve. Well, they're bigger. Let me see if I got one. All right, so these are air conditioning valves. And so what happens when you connect to it is this pin in here comes down and hits this to open the valve. Just a standard Schrader valve, almost like a bicycle, just a little bigger. And what happens is if you don't have this pin that you can send in once this thing's already centered, sometimes you push it on a little sideways or whatever, and you can see these stems are very tiny, if I can get it out of here. These stems are very tiny, and it's real easy to tweak that over and bend it, and then it won't seal properly. So just being able to set the pin after the fact is huge in terms of getting it, having less issues with the valves. And you can buy these fittings kind of a la carte after the fact. So you don't necessarily need to find a manifold with all these. Well, you have to find a four-way manifold, but as far as the hoses and the fittings and whatnot, you can kind of do that after the fact. You can find what you need after the fact. So as far as a manifold goes, that's about all you need. Kind of nice to have these all snap on there so they're out of the way. The other thing you are going to need is a vacuum pump, and I will grab that. So this is the vacuum pump that I have had forever. It's just a Robinair. You're supposed to change the oil in it. I've been waiting for it to crap out, and it never seems to. I have changed the oil in it once or twice, but they say you're supposed to change it every time you use it. So this is just a 1.5 CFM pump. 110 volts, 60 hertz, fifth of a horsepower. I have used it a lot. I mean, this pump probably has, I wouldn't be surprised if it's got over 100 hours of runtime on it, which, for a hobby mechanic, and it was a very inexpensive pump. When you're vacuuming down systems, AC systems, pulling a vacuum on anything, it's kind of like heating a room. As long as you're adding heat faster than it's escaping, then you're going to be able to warm the room, right? And when you're pulling a vacuum, it's the same thing. As long as you can withdraw air faster than it is entering the system, which if you're going to be pulling an AC system down to a perfect vacuum, there better be no air coming into it. You can get away with a very small pump. So you don't need a big 2-stage pump or anything. It's just going to take longer to get to a vacuum with this. I mean, typically what I will do on cars is I'll actually let this thing sit overnight and pull a vacuum on stuff to pull all the moisture out of the receiver dryers. I've got a couple videos maybe I'll link to of receiver dryers and what they do and kind of how they're put together. But really pulling the moisture out of that desiccant is the hard part. So, you know, a more powerful vacuum pump will do that faster, is really the only advantage. But as far as, you know, for a hobby mechanic, this is perfectly acceptable. You know, time is not money here. You know, by contract, I think we're supposed to have more time than money, which is why we're doing this typically. So this is pretty much all you need, is just a, you know, vacuum pump like this, and a, you know, halfway decent manifold. You don't need a crazy expensive one. I think this one was like maybe 60 bucks. But again, you want the 4-way with sight glass. Those are the big things. You know, my old manifold was just a 3-way, no sight glass. I did a lot of I did a lot of jobs with this thing, but I can tell you after having this makes it a lot easier. So that's, hope that's helpful to someone that's getting into doing AC for the first time or whatever. This is kind of what you want to look for. So thanks for watching.